everybody. Welcome back to Friggin' Good Politics. Greg and Derek here.
Hey,
It's officially D-Day +1 on Liberation Day, as Trump calls it, and we're here to do a little pickup game. It's going to be a shorter podcast episode this week because we're just going to talk about tariffs and what this means for the election. So I'll give a little bit of a preamble, and then Derek,
please
I'll let you head first.
hit
Okay.
it.
So just get everybody up to speed. Yesterday, President Trump announced that it was Liberation Day, and that meant he was going to start the next Great Recession, apparently, slap the entire world economy with a 10% pay-to-play tariff to enter.
Mhm.
He slapped countries with counter tariffs that I was told were all made up with ChatGPT. And then Canada was left 60% of our USMCA goods tariff-free, but like 40% are not. And we still have like steel and aluminum tariffs, softwood lumber, and a bunch of other ones that they say are going to come out. So this came on the heels of, on Friday, Mark Carney saying he had a very productive call with Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump said that he liked Mr. Carney and they agreed on many things. Everyone in liberal camp took this as a major win. But then obviously, then this comes out on Monday and we're still getting tariffs. So I guess that wasn't the case. So, Derek, what do you make of all this? Is this the end of the elbows up? Are we elbows down, elbows midway? Like, what's going on here?
Probably elbows midway, I'd say. And the other thing I noticed is that we're able to renegotiate our previous trade agreement after this
Yeah.
election, is what Trump said. So I think that's good for the country overall. I
Yeah.
think that works. I think equally well for Carney and for the conservatives here is okay. Obviously we have to, elbows mid up now. We have to respond to these tariffs. I saw Carney did the retaliatory tariffs today. The NDP are proposing victory bonds of some sort. I didn't really get what their policy was on that. Did you actually see what they said? I got kind of confused with Jagmeet.
I
Jagmeet's just trying to get some attention in this election. He's like, I need
yeah.
something. Let's do victory bonds. And
Yeah. Notice me, please.
please notice me. Uh, so I thought overall it was not dramatically impactful for the election. I would say, like, I felt, if we would have got hit heavier than what we already had gotten hit, I think it would have changed things. I think it still favors Carney because he's the prime minister and he can do the retaliatory tariffs. And then he's talking about a fund to support auto workers and other people. So I think that overall favors him. But maybe in a couple days, this is a bit out of the news cycle and you can get back to the regular scheduled program in the issues, which would favor Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. So I think this week was always scary for both sides. I think it always favored the Liberals, especially just because you're in government and you have sort of the powers of
Yeah.
government to do things. So I think it helps them the most. You do see some sneaky momentum for the Conservatives starting here.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a bit of a shift starting Saturday, Sunday. Carney had a pretty bad week so far. I think
He did.
with the Chinese ties and interference problems with that candidate, where they had a
Yeah.
candidate that said we should uh, basically send this conservative candidate to China as bounty, and like seriously, um,
Yeah.
and
And Carney defended him for
and
multiple days.
yeah, and then the guy ended up resigning, but Carney was like, "Oh, it was just a
Yeah.
teachable moment," and everyone was like, "Well, your company owes Beijing $250 million, and you are being very nice to the Chinese in this situation when they're talking about a Canadian citizen turning him in for bounty money for the Chinese government."
Presumably to murder him. Like, let's be clear, because
Yes,
4 Canadians were just killed. What was that? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
yes.
So terrible, terrible timing on this guy's part. Like, did not read the room.
Yeah, so I thought that was a big moment in the election. I don't know how many Canadians actually saw it, but it was a test of character. And this is where I saw liberals even saying, like, this is a bad few days for Carney, showing
Yeah.
that he does seem beholden to global interests. And that's what I've been saying about Carney the whole time. I feel like he's
Yeah.
this global elitist that people aren't really recognizing. He sort of always bowed to whatever the global people want to do and not had Canadian interests as the forefront. I think he cares about Canada for sure, but he has three passports and he is very interested in the US in appeasing Trump.
Yes.
Moved
Yeah.
his headquarters there as soon as Trump announced tariffs.
Yeah.
He has invested in pipelines and coal and things in other parts of the world, but has kind of screwed over Canada with his net zero banking and supporting Trudeau and not approving pipelines. So it's a bit of a con job that Carney's doing here, and it seems to still be holding for the most part, but there is some sneaky momentum here that people are starting to, I think, see him for what he really is. These tariffs, I think, help him though sort of avoid the conversation about his ties and everything because it's so noisy. That's my
Yeah.
sense of it. Is I think this really does help Carney. Although Pierre had a very good speech yesterday that I thought was very prime
Yeah.
ministerial. That he did a fantastic job, and again, I just don't know if Canadians are going to see that. Like he did a fantastic job. I think all of he's had some really good days here. And but if you're following the mainstream media, they're not showing that very well at all because there's too much other noise, and they don't love Pierre. Pierre's trying to remove their
Very
from him.
clearly.
So I think that's a big problem. But if you're following on social media, you're like, this guy's got something. So I think it's this kind of sneaky momentum thing. We'll get into the polls in a second, but what do you think, Greg? What's your takeaways?
I'm gonna be a little more. I always get mixed up. Bullish or bearish? What's the? I'm gonna be more.
Bullish.
I think that.
You're
Yeah, I'm gonna
bullish
be
on the
more bullish
conservatives.
than you.
Okay,
Yeah,
be
I
more
think this
bullish.
is. I think this may have been like I say the worst possible outcome, not in the sense that like this is going to immediately tank his polling numbers. I just think it's the least best way that it could have
Mhm.
happened for Mr. Carney because he can't claim it as a full win because there are still tariffs.
Yeah.
So it's not like if had Trump like magically taken all those tariffs off, absolutely that would have been an unmitigated win for Mr. Carney. He could have
Right.
run with it. But that didn't really happen. So he can't fully claim a win on it. And obviously
Mhm.
he can't claim a loss on it per se, in the sense that, like, well, we have to go back to the drawing board because it's like, well, you said you had this great call on Friday. You said you're the master negotiator. So what happened here? So he's kind of stuck in this like no man's land of
Right.
nothing, so he can't really use it either way. And I think you're right. Within a few days, eventually, like because it happened this way, it's going to slowly fade out of the news cycle, and we're going to go
Mhm.
back to more domestic issues,
Yeah.
which is clearly where. And David Coletto of Advocates Data has been talking about this for days now. I've
Yeah.
seen other people repeat his comments that when the ballot box issue is these other domestic issues, it works out way better for Pierre.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think maybe those sneaky polling numbers, which you said we'll touch on in a minute, lend to that theory. But I think
Mhm.
this was the least best outcome for Carr. And I think his he looked very bothered and he looked very tired last night
Mm.
on Parliament Hill when the media got like it was a minute and 40 and I was nearly falling asleep halfway through because he just looked so tired. He looked exhausted and he
Right.
looked bothered that he
Mm.
wasn't getting the win that he wanted out of it. At
I
least
see.
that's what it signaled to me watching it.
Mhm.
Now I've got my own partisan bent, so maybe I'm looking at it through a particular
You
tinted
would
lens,
never
but
do
that's
that,
how it
Greg.
looked to me.
You would
I
never
would
do
never. Oh gosh,
that.
no. No.
Yes, there's no partisan bend here. Here's the reality. Everybody has a partisan bend, whether they admit it or not,
Yeah,
and you all see the world through that. So what I'm trying to do here is like,
yeah,
okay, what are Canadians really feeling and seeing here? And it's hard to sense because there's so much noise, so much going on that's like, what is actually getting through to Canadians? Like, even like I'm
yeah,
trying to watch this very carefully. And so like I'm on Twitter, I'm on all the news channels or whatever. I'm trying to check this. And it's like I can't keep up. Like there's so much news happening. And
yeah,
it's like, what is this guy saying? What is it like? Do we have tariffs? Do we not have tariffs? What did the like so I think again, that's why I say overall this supports the liberals more than the conservatives because it's just chaos. Like it's so noisy and so like if you here's the thing, if you put Carney and Pierre next to one another, I think Pierre wins. Like 9 times out of 10 with people. I think there's some sort of smugness stuff that people don't like about him. There's some things
sure,
women don't like about him. Same thing with Carney though. It's like I think there's an arrogance factor about him too that hasn't really come out as much yet because people don't know him as well. But I think when you talk
yeah,
about who's got the plan, who's got the vision, who's got the charisma, who's got the nice family, who's got all these things, Pierre wins on all that stuff. But I just
yeah,
don't think Canadians are seeing it. And I think this week they saw it a little bit more. But we'll see, and I think the debates are I've net usually the debates don't actually change that much. There's obviously lots of precedent in elections where debates do really really matter, but in this case, I think they matter more than ever because people haven't
yeah,
really heard Carney at a long form type of thing, and now they're going to, and we'll see if he is able to like Pierre's going to be very, very good. He's going to be very strong. So can he box Carney
yeah,
in? Is there enough time to do all these things? That'll be fascinating. I think this is a fascinating election because
yeah.
let's go through before we go through the polls. Any thoughts on what I just said there, Greg?
I would push back just a teeny bit on the signal and who it's reaching. I think you're right in a sense. Like clearly, the older generations are getting everything from like legacy media and the news.
Yep.
Like they're sitting down to watch, and whether they're liberal or conservative. Like my mom and uncle are very conservative. But
Mhm.
they watch the CTV 6 o'clock news every night and call me to tell me how annoying they are or how annoyed they
Right.
are about the
Right.
coverage.
Right.
And that, but like our generation, you and me and younger, we're getting everything from social media,
Yes. Everything.
everything,
Yeah.
and that's where Pierre's currently dominating.
He is.
I
Yeah.
would say, or at least it appears so. He's got
Yeah.
all these policy announcements, all these rallies, all these videos. Like you look at the watch count on all this stuff. Pierre's
It's
are like
very high.
10, 20 times higher than Carney's videos. So I
Mhm.
think each camp is kind of reaching the demographics that it's the polling suggests are reacting the best to them.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
but maybe there's a bit of a bit of a middle ground between what both of us are saying.
Yeah, I guess I'm being a little tentative because I think I was more bullish on the conservatives, early on, and now I'm like, okay, we have to, in order for the conservatives to win, there are paths for them for victory here. Like everyone's just sort of writing them off. Oh, it's not possible. There's still a couple paths, but I think we have to see a little bit more shift in the polling.
Let's dive right into the polling data. Let's do it.
Okay, polling data. Okay, so you got the Liberals here on 338canada.com. Great polling aggregate that shows all the polls that they're finding everywhere. They rank them, did a really good job. So the Liberals are at 43% plus or minus 5%. You have the Conservatives at 38% plus or minus 4%. The NDP at 8. Seems pretty stable at around 8 plus or minus 2%. Bloc at 6, Green at 2, and then you got PPC there at around 1% or less as well. So what you're finding here is the Liberals clearly have, according to all the aggregates of polls, a bit of a lead here. And if this lead holds, and this is who actually shows up to vote on election day, they should get a majority government. So that's what everyone's sort
Yeah,
of predicting at this point. The
yeah,
trouble for me in all this is when you actually look at some of the polling, I'll scroll down. For the people on audio, you can't see this, but you'll see a wide variety of polls and what they're saying. So, most of them are kind of saying, okay, the Liberals are up by a bit. But then you have some other polls. Innovative came out, I think it was yesterday, saying the CPC is up by a percent. So you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then you have some polls, like Eco says, the Liberals are up 12%. And then you have other
yeah,
ones that say they're tied, and other ones that say they're up, Liberals are up by 2%. Some say 3. So like clearly the aggregates are showing the Liberals have some strength here, but
yeah,
it's not, it feels undecided to me. Like I think this election can still shift. Like it doesn't seem solidified enough because the polls are a little like they're all over the map and not all over the map, if you know what I mean. And the
yeah,
NDP, if you look at the innovative poll, they're at 12% instead of their usual kind of 7 or 8%, which means they take from the Liberals. And so if Jagmeet
yeah,
can get a little momentum here, which I doubt he's still going to, so I think they could sort of still have to gain more popular vote in order to take this thing. So that's interesting from like a national perspective, but I wanted to dive into BC because I thought that was fascinating because I saw some people saying, oh, the Conservatives are way up in BC. So I looked at the aggregates of the polls here, and these are wildly all over the place in BC. So
yeah.
Nanos has the Liberals up by 11 points. So does Liaison. But then you look at another one from Liaison a couple days ago, and the
From like
Conservatives are,
few days ago, yeah. Like
yeah, and the Conservatives
the
are
amount
up.
of signal to noise ratio is crazy.
I know. And Leger has the Liberals up 10 points, and then Nanos has the Conservatives up 2. Nanos also has the Conservatives up by 7 points. So you're like, man, something is odd here. Like this is not consistent. Like there's too many
Yeah,
outliers where it's like they're up 13%. Oh wait, the Conservatives are up 7. So that's why this election feels very undecided and is very fascinating to me because BC's got a lot of seats. And this is where the
yeah,
Conservatives were dominating because of the issues of crime, chaos, affordability, drugs, all that stuff, which Conservatives really, really do win on. And
yeah.
if they can transition now that the tariffs are gone, if they can transition back to this, they can really clean up in BC. So,
Yeah.
any thoughts on this before I go to Ontario, Greg?
Yeah, so just as like a few thoughts, actually, well, if you go to Quebec too, like I'm
Yep.
pretty sure in the Main Street, oh these
Got an
stupid
ad here.
ads.
Close the ad. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Main Street had, or did they even have it on there? Oh, I thought in Main Street's latest data they had the Conservatives at like 30%. Because like, yeah, it's all over the place. Two things that I think the polls are not capturing. Oh yeah, there's one from Liaison from a few days ago that hasn't been
Yeah.
near 30%. Because like
29%. Yeah.
here's the thing: the polls are not capturing two things right now. They're not capturing um, the non-voter, which Abacus David Coletto at Abacus Data has been speaking about.
Yep.
He's made it very clear that there is a voter segment out there that a lot of these pollsters are unable to properly capture just because of the tools they use. Like the tools they use only capture people who are very invested, like who have mental illnesses like you and me that pay too much attention to this stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not capturing the guy that's like the guy that votes once every 12 years. They just don't capture that guy.
Or young
But
people that have
according
just started voting.
or
They've never voted, right?
yeah, new voters as well. Yeah, exactly. And in
Yep.
both the new and non-voter category, the conservatives are sweeping by like 10, 12, 15%,
Yep.
which is crazy. Another point to make actually is that one of the things that what sometimes the ways that these pollsters capture data skews a certain to a certain demographic. Like someone said, I was told by someone that Angus Reid, for example, captures its data using air miles data. Like that's how they get some of their people for their panels. And like who I didn't even know air miles was still a thing. Like I thought that was like
Yeah.
something that phased out 20 years ago. So that's something that generally older voters, generally higher income, which tends to skew a little bit liberal, are capturing. The other thing that again Abacus and a few other pollsters like Innovative have pointed out. One of the other pollsters I'm going to forget now. Was it Main Street? Anyway, when they asked people about like how firm are you in your vote? It was Angus Reid actually. How firm are you in your vote? Like how committed are you to actually get out and put a ballot in a box? The conservatives are like 70+% committed to vote, their voters, whereas liberals are only around 50. So if you get 70% of the conservative vote out and only 50% of the liberal vote out, like that is a win for Pierre. And if on top of that you get all these non-voters, all these new voters coming out for the conservatives, the polls may end up looking wildly wrong. And I think we actually had a similar situation to that in Saskatchewan in their last election, where some of the polls, like right before, said like the NDP were going to win by 10%, and then it went the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes polls do miss these things.
Pollsters typically underrepresent conservative voters, so there is that. But so I think there could be a big shift. I still need to see more of a shift in these aggregates because if you look at these Quebec numbers, it's like plus 27% for the Liberals in some of these. Like some of them are only +8 or whatever, but like a lot of them are pretty high. So I think that's a little scary. And then you look at Ontario here. Ontario needs to shift because the aggregates are saying, the Liberals are plus, they're 49%. So they're about 10 points up in Ontario, that's the most important thing for the Conservatives. They have to get some of that back. Now, some of the polls, Innovative again, has them tied. Some of them have, Liberals only up by a couple and a bigger gap of uncertainties, plus or minus 6%. So, yeah, I think what you saw in the United States as well is people with pollsters, they don't want to say I'm voting Trump, and it's something weird that conservatives don't want to say they're voting conservative, but they end up doing it. And they also can't find those younger people to come onto these weird panels. People have to understand how these panels work with the polling.
Yeah.
It's typically you have a group of people that are always doing the same. It's always like the same groups of people doing these polls. And it's roughly, yeah. Like they try to have a good mix, but I know with Angus Reid, for example, is they have a selection of a bunch of Canadians that have agreed to be part of these panels, and so they're kind of the more engaged, more older people, and they're doing this for a little bit of money or whatever. And so yeah, it is a bit skewed. Like it's it's not a perfect science, and so what you've seen a lot of these elections is you don't know until election day, and typically conservatives get a big boost. So, but is that boost going to be enough to prevent a liberal minority or majority? Right now, I would say no. I think it needs to shift. So that's where I would say the debate can really shift things. Like, we were part of the team for the Danielle Smith election, and she was down in the polling the whole time, but it did shift. It kind of became more even after the debate because Premier Smith had a really strong debate, really shifted things. NDP also made some mistakes. They said they wanted to tax corporations more midway through that election, and that really, really hurt them. And so while the polling didn't show Smith was up by a lot, she was up just a little bit. And then the underrepresentation in polls put her over the top when people actually showed up because more conservatives were typically showing up. So, I think there's sneaky momentum for the conservatives for sure. But I think in the next week or two, you really need to see more of a shift in the aggregates for there to be a dramatic shift in the election is my thought. Now, I think once the tariffs are gone, and who knows what else Carney's going to do. He didn't have a very good week, but this next week is critical. Like even
Yeah.
over the weekend into the next week, it's going to a critical time for this election to see how it is going to go.
Yep. No, I agree. I'm still a little bit more bullish on the conservatives. I think they've got a lot of like uncaptured momentum that
They do.
some other pollsters are capturing
Yeah,
that I
some
think
are.
really lays the groundwork for them being able to move in. Maybe that doesn't mean like a conservative majority. Maybe it means either a liberal minority or a conservative minority.
Yeah.
But I think those polls suggest that the chances of a liberal majority have now, according to just like these factors that I'm looking at, if these factors are indicative of a future trend, it means that the liberal majority is now out of option. There's no longer an option for Mark Carney and his team.
Well, I think it's still definitely an option. I, like if you could just stick him in a closet for the next 3 weeks and he might win. The problem is you can't stick him in a
Yeah,
closet. He's got to do a debate and whatnot, and I think he's going to falter. So that's
I think he's
my
going to flop hard. Yeah,
yeah, my I still think he's going to flop. I just don't know if he's going to flop enough to
sure.
prevent what's going on here. We'll see. Again, I think Pierre's such a good politician. But there's a lot of these traditional liberal voters. I was talking to a person the other day, and it's like her mom's a liberal and didn't like Trudeau, but she felt like I thought this was a funny anecdote. She thought that, well, I didn't like Trudeau and I was sort of talking bad against him. And so that I did my part to get rid of that bad liberal that nobody liked. So now I can go back voting liberal again.
Yeah,
And so it's like, but it's like, well, what about the last 10 years where everything was really bad and the liberals did a bad job? Well, I did my part in getting rid of, probably the problem. And now Mark Carney's not really the problem. So I'm just going to go back voting liberal, even though I said, 3 months ago that I would have voted conservative. So I do
yeah,
worry about that. This, traditional liberal voter that's like, well, Trudeau's gone now. So, and I did my part. So whatever.
yeah. I also still think that we're going to see on election day, like no, I'm not talking all of them. Like the NDP is not going to surge to 20% or something like that.
Yeah.
But I greatly foresee a lot of NDP because they're the NDP voters, whether they're going to vote liberal or conservative, they're even lower down on the committed vote
Right.
than even the liberals are. They're into the 40s. So like I could very strongly see like a lot of these people that are because clearly that's where most of Carney's like people keep saying Pierre's collapsed. Maybe his vote share's gone down a little bit, but the real story, as everyone's been saying, is the collapse of the NDP.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
foresee I'm strongly foreseeing on election day, or and definitely a good chance this happens post debate. We'll see the poll shift where like NDP voters just either stop saying they're going to vote liberal, or they go back to voting NDP.
Right.
Which would take a huge like if you take 4 to 5%. Like if you look at the Abacus data numbers, if like 4 to 5%, which it has them tied, you take 4 or 5% away from the liberals. That's at least a conservative minority, if
Yeah.
not a majority, depending on the regionals.
Yeah.
So
No, there's
yeah,
definitely a path for the conservatives here. I like
yeah,
if I think the political betting apps are starting to say like it was like very high for Carney. Now it's like a little bit less this week. And so
yeah,
I think what conservatives are hoping for, and I think we'd be in that boat as well, is that that percentage would start to be more, it's more of a 50-50 battle where
yeah.
it's more like 70-30 right now. So 70% chance Carney's going to be the government, 30% Pierre. But it's like, I think it could get to 50-50 pretty quick.
Oh
But
yeah,
like, if we're looking just today, it's like liberals clearly have a massive edge in the aggregates, but there's lots of sneaky things happening here that
yeah,
don't make a whole lot of sense yet. And
yeah.
so I'm trying to balance this out a bit here, Greg, as you can tell.
No, totally. You have someone's got to do it.
Yeah, because you're not balancing yourself out, so I'm gonna try to,
No,
yeah. Which I love you for that, so it's fun. Um, we're
I'm
we're
a
out of
total
time.
partisan hack. I can't help it.
I know. But hey, when you're in politics, working in politics, you are political, and
Yeah,
we should all have a viewpoint, and that's fine, and that's why we have conversation to, bounce things off of one another and find a way to think about this. That and like I'm always trying to put myself in the shoes of like the average Canadian, talk to different people, and say,
yeah,
how are they viewing this? What's the psychology happening here?
totally.
And so I guess again, the end of the day is like this election's still up for grabs.
Oh yeah,
Even though right now some people would be like, no, it's not. It's like, no, I think it still is. Like I think there's still time here. And the tariff stuff has to kind of go away, and I think it will, which is the purpose of this episode. There's still
yeah,
lingerings of that for sure, and fear that
sure.
benefits Carney, but the momentum is still on Pierre's side. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll see where it goes. It'll be
Yeah,
fun.
don't forget, like in the 1984 election with Brian Mulroney, like when John Turner replaced Trudeau Senior, he held his polling high until the debates. Until the
Right.
debates, everyone thought John Turner was going to win, and then what happened? Brian Mulroney won with 50%.
Yeah.
So
Crazy,
anything
right?
can happen. Anything
Anything
can,
can happen.
and the same thing happened again in 1993 with Kim Campbell. She was going to win 40% of the vote,
Mm-hmm.
and then look what happened. So
That's right.
now, obviously, the caveats about different parties being in play at different times and timelines and events and all that good stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but the underlying logic still holds. So, and
For
as
sure.
you say, it's still anyone's election at this point.
It is. It is. So yeah, fascinating election. This is great. And just huge shout out to everybody that listens and watches. Thanks for being part of this
Yes,
freaking
thank
good
you.
politics community. We have a lot of fun talking about this. We'd love to give you more coverage on it and our thoughts and bring on more people. We're just busy with this election. So
Yeah,
we're going to do as much as we can. This is a quick episode to get you caught up and get some thoughts. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. And thanks for liking and sharing and telling your friends about this. It is appreciated. You are great people. So thanks for the text messages
absolutely.
too when we put out an
Yes.
episode. So I appreciate when people do that.
And we'll be at the Canada Strong and Free Networking Conference next week. So we'll
That's
be
right.
doing a show there and hopefully doing some interviews with some people that show up there.
I'm sure there'll be some interesting folk to talk to. So we should have
At
more
least one or
content
two.
coming your way. If you like content, we'll
Yeah.
get you some more.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.